Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. Just along the lines of the last couple versions of the conversation, and I know you were asked about identifying the redacted documents, and I guess trying to figure out what kind of timeline you could provide answers about them. I guess I would say, as having been at the other side of that, is it's hard for you to make that kind of assumption or guess even, because you might not know the reasons for why it was redacted. So even though you might be able to physically produce it in a matter of hours, if there's a legal requirement that required the redactions and say a court order is necessary to get beyond the redactions and produce the information, you can't do that without the court order, and you don't know what the timeline's going to be for that. With respect to the who can give the answers about timing and some of the specifics about the document requests, my suggestion is, also a former staffer just like you, what we did during the Whitewater hearings was that we actually had meetings between the staff and members of those departments who were making those decisions. And what was good about that was, for example, if you have a redaction discussion that involves information that's confidential or otherwise not to be made public, trying to have that discussion in a public hearing doesn't work very well. So having them behind closed doors where you can have candid, why was this redacted? Well, it was redacted because of this. So my suggestion would be to have much more robust and extensive meetings at the staff level of the committee prior to us having a committee hearing, and include us as well on the minority side, so that some of these answers can be addressed, I think, in a more productive way than having hearings for these sorts of things, where by necessity they send one person up who doesn't have all the answers because there are multiple departments that are involved in making these decisions. And with respect to CISA, you know, and we got a lot of this on the Homeland Security Committee, and this goes to the conspiracy theories with respect to disinformation, namely that the Biden administration is attempting to mislead the public or, you know, abuse social media and the like. The only conversation I would say that the part of the conversation that's missing there is the fact that the United States has competitors like China, Russia, terrorists, Sinaloa cartel, and others that are actively engaged in disinformation in the United States. That includes in elections, and we know the Russians were involved in submitting disinformation in 2020. In fact, Mr. Durham said that yesterday at the hearing when he came up here to testify. And so it's important, I think, for the United States to try and address that. Unfortunately, Chairman Jordan, Mr. Gates, and some others engaged, I think, in disinformation in some of the comments they made about the panel that was set up at the Department of Homeland Security. And that included the personal attacks on Ms. Jankowicz, which undermined our ability to respond to some of these sorts of disinformation pieces. And I would just say this, too. I know there's a sense that with respect to disinformation, the government can't and shouldn't be in the business of determining what's true or not. And I think we do have to be careful, especially when it comes to political positions. But there's also points where we clearly need the government to be involved, and it's really made a difference. Just a couple of quick ones. Information about tobacco when I was a kid. It was, and I lived in North Carolina, so tobacco was everywhere. It wasn't known that tobacco was killing people. Public efforts and public campaigns to address that and provide information, accurate information to the public, made a difference there, even though the tobacco companies were saying at the time that the government was providing false information. Drunk driving was another one. Seatbelts was another one, too. One of the ones we've got right now, you know, there's a sort of a growing movement with respect to active shooter issues. People are making false calls about whether there's an active shooter in a local school. I think it would be good for the government, whether it's a local or state government in that community, to put out the correct information. No, there's not an active shooter going on. That sort of information, emergency scenarios and the like, I think it's important for us to be able, the government, federal, state, and local, to be able to put out information that addresses these sorts of issues, because I think it benefits the public. And with that, I'll yield back.